building your financial life with another person and partner. Today's guest on the Real Life Planning Podcast, Prudence Zhu, just wrote a great new book about couples and money. And she's coming to talk to us about all the benefits and pitfalls that she sees working with couples, especially first-generation American couples, in her practice. Welcome, Prudence.
Hi, thank you for having me. Hi, Cynthia.
So tell me, what is the most important thing to know about you?
So I came to the US in 2012 for my education, and then I stayed and I achieved financial freedom, my financial freedom number back in 2021. And from there, I started my career transition for a more fulfilling and meaningful, engaging career that make me love what I do. And here I am, the only financial planner helping immigrants, first generation, second generation, and cross-cultural couples to achieve their financial freedom.
Now, what did you do originally when you first came to work in the U.S.?
Before I came to the US, I was in private equity, and I didn't like it because it was like too many hours, and I really didn't see my personal impact in the work that I do. And so I came to the US with the balance between work and life in mind. So that's why I went into corporate finance for about 8 years before I finally quit in 2023.
Well, and what part of the country did you come to originally?
I went to South Bend, Indiana for my studies. Yeah, and I also met my husband there. So it was a very nice opportunity.
Wow. Is that where you are still, in South Bend?
No, so we moved down to Phoenix, Arizona in 2020 during COVID.
Okay. A little bit less to shovel in the winter.
That's true. That's true.
So what inspired you to write this book?
Oh, yeah. So my book, it's actually coming out. This is just a mock-up. It's coming out in September 23rd. This is really a combination of my years of experience and personal journey, as well as teaching my clients, both in group setting and one-on-one setting. So it's really me, as I mentioned, I realized I have reached that financial freedom goal back in 2021, but I feel that I was still not happy. So I was like trying to explore more, like what could make people happy. Even now, like finance is not a stressor anymore. And I found out that there were actually a lot of things we could do that I could have done 7 years ago when before I reached financial freedom to make me happier and have a more fulfilled life. So that really what inspired me to write this book. I really wish people, when they're on their financial journey, but also can have a better life and enjoy the process. Because I don't know if you have the same journey. I think when I was building towards that goal, I was like eyes on the goal, almost like blindsided, keep going. And it was stressful.
So when you say financial freedom, how are you defining that?
Before I was using the 4% rule. So basically multiply your annual spending by 25 times. And then that would be your financial goal. Because a lot of times like that's the financial independence goal where you can withdraw for another 30 years without running out.
So you can cover your basic bills without having to worry about working for somebody else.
Exactly. But then now as I'm in financial planning, I realize that's overshooting actually. Because a lot of times when we plan for a financial plan for a client, we take into consideration future incomes. So for example, me, I'm still working because I'm still young. Work brings me joy as well. I like the flexibility and personal engagement and all that, but I'm still bringing in income. So I didn't have to reach that financial independence goal in order to live the life that I want. In other words, I could have started much earlier and not really, I didn't have to reach that goal in order to live the life I want. You know what I mean?
Yes. When you and your husband first got married, what are some of the things that you did wrong?
Yeah, I think, so I mentioned that in the book. There are conflict styles, right? There are primarily 4 types. There's avoidant, competing, there's collaborating, which is the best kind, and then accommodating. And apparently in hindsight, I was the avoidant type. So basically, whenever there is a conflict, I feel hurt, and then I wasn't speaking out about it. And then over the years, it just accumulated. I'm adaptable, so the relationship was totally fine, and we still achieved our goals and all that, but I felt not as happy as I could be.
Or not as heard and understood.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually, I think that's very common for women. I don't know if you have the same problem.
So interestingly, I'm married to a first generation American, but my husband was born in South Africa and immigrated to the United States as a child. So he grew up a lot of his life in the United States, even though his parents are South African. So he has a foot in two cultures, if you will. And he grew up in a more affluent family than I did. And he was fantastic with money. We made some decisions when we got married. We were 39 to 41 when we got married. And consequently, we were both established in our careers, and we decided to live on one income when we got married. And that was a powerful decision that informed a lot of success in our lives.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's really amazing. That opens up to a lot of possibilities and flexibility.
Yeah. And is your spouse also a first generation American?
No, he's raised and born in Portland, Oregon.
Okay. So we've got a number of different ways of communicating, right? So we have some who you have different first languages, right? You have totally different cultural experiences. And does he also work in finance, or does he do something different?
He's related. He's a professor in economics.
So again, academia and working in corporate America, two different things. So this is like a masterclass in learning how to negotiate and collaborate.
Yes. And I think it's interesting, like he also had that financial model built, but not until recently I realized, okay, there's a whole entire practice of compassionate financial planning, which is basically using your resources to fulfill your life goals.
Oh, that's a great phrase. I like that. Compassionate financial planning. What are some of the guidance that you give couples in your book?
When you think about it, it's very simple and straightforward. First of all, open communication. And second of all, being very creative in envisioning your shared life.
Oh, isn't that so true? That's what the financial planning process can be so transformative for a new couple, right? Because it helps you not just look at your current financial picture together, but to envision, okay, this is what we want together as a unit. So I think it's really powerful.
Yeah. And what's important of all is to take small steps in creating that dream into reality. Because a lot of times we feel like, okay, change has to be major, has to be zero or all for it. But there are a lot of iterations of how to realize your dream and how to bring it more into reality. I think achieving a goal is not like one goal. It's more of a process. So that's why we should like I encourage all my clients to start with small changes, and that brings them closer to the big goal.
Are there any habits that you suggest in your book that couples develop to take some of the small steps?
Yeah. So actually, my book is very different. As you can see from the book, the cover, it's nothing like the other financial planning books. It's very heart-driven. And we have in the book, there are 8 chapters, but the first 4 chapters, there were 2 about emotions, both love and fear, and then 2 about envisioning, 1 about ideal life or how to live fully with tomorrow in mind, and then the change you want to see. So it's pretty much like emotions and mindset, and then pair it up with financial knowledge in order to make concrete plans. Also included a lot of exercise, like at the end of each chapter. So that's one thing I would encourage clients and my readers to do. Make it a regular practice. You have the dedicated time to connect both on the emotional side, but also on the financial side.
In my house, we call it our family business meeting. We say, okay, we want to have a business meeting. And my husband's a little bit more of a night owl, and I'm more of an early bird. And it's like, I see clients at the end of the week, but I don't see clients on my. So we've had this work out. When is the ideal time to do it where we're both feeling fresh and engaged to have this conversation? And we have multiple businesses together because we have a real estate business too. And I've got my financial planning business. I have a continuing education business. So there's a lot of spinning balls.
Yeah.
So I like to call it the family business meeting. And that takes the emotion out of it, right? It's just the business of your life.
Oh, wow. Yeah. But that's the beauty of it. So I only put in a structure, but then what content you curate with your partner could be totally unique to you. For example, me and my husband cannot be in the same business because we have our very distinct and opinion about things. So it's more, okay, give me a direction and I'll work my way around it and achieve that goal. I need my independence to achieve that. But I love it. I have a structure to the communication and update. Yeah.
Now, do you have an opinion about budgeting and shared expenses? Do you like the yours, mine, and ours concept? What do you tell your clients to do?
On the budgeting, I like to do it in kind of a combined, like a hybrid model. It's basically preserves the independence for each of the partners. So basically you have the shared spending, but then you also have your independent spending. As long as you agree to it and it's sustainable, then that's okay.
Got it. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. When my husband Steve and I got married, we had a joint budget, and we decided what went in the joint budget, and then we contributed proportionate to our income in the relationship. And then we each had our own accounts, or we did our own thing. But we agreed that we wouldn't spend in our individual spending, that we wouldn't spend more. I think at the time it was like $250, but the numbers getting bigger and more.
Yeah.
That we wouldn't, as trust grew in the relationship, right? That we wouldn't spend over a certain amount without talking to each other first.
Yeah. So I think for our family, it started as like 500, then 1,000, and then, but we still talk to each other about big decisions. As long as we're okay to it, then it's not a problem. And I just want to touch up, because you mentioned contribute to the joint account proportion to your income. I think that's pretty common. In my household, it's a little bit different. We basically balance it so that the end result is we both have similar amount of dispensable money. In other words, the person who makes more may contribute even more. But in the end, both are equal and both have the power to make decisions that they want.
Yes. When Steve and I were both working in corporate America, and my husband is semi-retired now, he manages the real estate business, but he's retired from his corporate career. We would, if one of us would get a bonus, we'd put 50% in the joint account, and then we'd split the other 25 and 25% and put them in our individual accounts.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
It's so nice.
Don't you think it takes a long time for a couple to figure out what is going to work for them as a couple? It's not like your way or my way is the only way. It's
Yeah,
just
exactly.
that people have to agree on what's the role.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. I think at the end of the day, it's the bottom line is mutual respect and open communication.
Well, do you see in your practice sometimes, especially when you have a lot of first generation new Americans that you're working with, that sometimes cultural expectations get in the way? Like one partner is doing all the money managing, for example. Not that can't happen in an American-born couple either, but how do you handle things like that?
I always encourage both partners to attend the meeting. So it is important to have both their individual perspective and also then try to strategize a plan that works for both of them. It goes without saying both should be our clients and they should be, all three of us should be working collaboratively as a team that would bring the most success into the financial plan. A very realistic concern is that, say, if one person is more engaged in the financial planning, but what if something happens to that person, then the other person will be left with a lot of stress and then the need to figure everything out by themselves. Yeah, so it's, while we can, we try to include everybody in the conversation and empower them to make decisions.
So you talk a little bit in your book about values-driven financial planning. Can you break that down for us a little bit? What do you mean by that? And how does that work practically in terms of operations?
Yes, yeah. So values-driven financial planning, it's, as I said, it's a process that the advisor and client really dive deep in what brings joy and what's most important for the client. And that would be the foundation for us to design a financial plan. Because a lot of times when you skip that or just go through that as a questionnaire, it's not enough. For example, a client comes and asks if they have enough money to take a career break. And behind that decision, there might be a lot of emotions and different assumptions and expectations that's not spoken. And we really need to understand what's behind that in order to give them the best advice.
What are some other things that you talk about in your book?
I mentioned the first 4 chapters. And then the 5th chapter is a flowchart of financial literacy. Because this book is not only for the people who are very savvy in finances. Actually, when I serve my clients, a lot of them don't really think about finance as something that they should put dedicated time and effort in learning or managing. Because maybe they didn't have the financial stress, or they didn't think it long term, or someone else took care of it. This book is really give a common language, which is emotions and dreams, so that we can be on the same team in working towards the same goal. So for me, like financial literacy is to address the people who don't necessarily have a high level of financial skills. And then the next chapter is financial planning, which is a very comprehensive view of all the different aspects of financial management. And then a chapter coming back to say, okay, let's keep the momentum going, and what are the other skills and tools that we could use in making this big, healthy habit and part of your life, really, because finance is really a life skill at this point.
Tell me a little bit more about how your personal experiences coming to the U.S. as an adult, how it's informed the work you do with professionals that have arrived to the U.S. from another place.
Yeah, one big thing that I noticed is that how different generations of the family relates to money might be different from different culture. And of course, like your personal experience impacts that too. So that's primarily people who are more individually focused, people who are more nuclear family, small family unit focused, and then there's multi-generation focused. I'm originally from China. So a lot of times I feel like, okay, the relationship between me and my extended family back in China is give and take. It's like we give each other a lot of gifts, sometimes cash, and we try to help each other out. So that's almost like unspoken expectation. And whereas for my husband, it's more, okay, let's focus on the small family first. And then everything else is, there's clear boundary between small family and extended family. Whereas me, I had to learn over the years, like how to define that boundary and communicate that boundary and realize, okay, a lot of it came with my culture and I need to be aware of that. Yeah. Same thing for my clients, because a lot of times, like, especially for the younger generation, because they came with the expectation of their culture and their family, but it may not necessarily be communicated with the other partner in the relationship. So a lot of it is to understand the full picture, whether it being fear or being stress or being empowerment. So we want to understand it first and then make sure that no surprises down the road.
You find that a lot of your clients want to invest in hard assets. They want to invest in real property, like apartment buildings, for example, or houses, or they want to buy gold or things like that.
Yeah, I see a big tendency to buy real estate, for example, definitely. Because if you take a look at their past experience, like they grew up, if my age, right? They grew up in the real estate boom in China. Naturally, they want to invest in real estate. And also, if they invested already in the US market, we've seen a lot of success. But for me, I'm more neutral. It's like, okay, if you see it as an opportunity, let's take a look at your skill set and passion and your interest level at managing that or hiring a property manager. Because that's how I started actually as well, balancing stock and real estate. That's diversification, but it comes with a lot of management, hands-on, and sometimes like middle of the night. So I really explore that personal interest and also the return of the investment itself in order to provide a big picture for my clients.
So tell us a little bit about your real estate business.
Our first home in Chicago was a owner-occupied 2-flat unit. Yeah, so you get a head start in owning a bigger asset. So it's leverage investment. So it's great, especially at the beginning. But do your own due diligence to see if it would fit for you. We've been lucky. We didn't have too much troubles, but still it was a handful to manage.
And you still have rentals?
Yeah, we still have that one. And then a couple years ago, we bought another house for my parents to live in the winter. And so basically we have 3 houses now. And we decided that while it is great for some people, especially if you're handy, But both me and my husband are not that type, so we will probably not invest in more.
The house that your parents come and stay in the wintertime, do you rent it out as a short or intermediate term rental in the other seasons?
Yeah, it's rented out when it's not in use.
Yeah, excellent. Now, there's some interesting stories in your book about turning financial challenges into growth opportunities. Could you share one with us?
Yeah. In chapter 2, on fear, it's actually a story from a member from my group coaching program. And it's something I never expected. So basically, he went through the exercise with his wife and then figured out like the one investment they did 10 and 15 years ago was actually out of fear because the wife was not fully confident in where they're going. She basically made the decision of paying 100% cash for a smaller property in a less desirable location. And now that property is basically like worthless. But they never fully communicated that. And it came out in this exercise. And the husband was almost like, oh, he didn't realize how much was going on behind all the financial decision. And now he had the courage and the skill set in bringing up and maintaining a very authentic and deep, meaningful conversation between the two of them. And I have a lot of confidence that this experience would rewrite a lot of the future decisions.
So if you have clients in your practice where they have two radically opposed money mindsets, so just say one's a saver, one's a spender, for example, or the love language of one is gifts, for example, and the love language of the other is acts of service. How do you navigate something like that?
Yeah, you're spot on. That's actually one of the client examples that I bring up in chapter 8. So in that case, a lot of things is much deeper rooted than what on the surface. So in that couple's case, we did the financial plan. One is extremely vigilant and the other is more careless and more driven by the heart and to provide care and love, not only for themselves, but extended family. I did the financial plan for them. So it's a one-on-one client. And it turns out that they could almost half their income and still make it work. So in other words, there's no need for that stress. And I see that in a lot of my clients to different extent. So once they see that bigger picture, all the stress is like a lot. I would say they become a lot less stressed. And then it's the financial plan, which serves as a reality check in a positive sense, so that they can feel less stressed and they don't really have to pay more attention on asset accumulation, but shift towards how to live a happy and balanced life.
Yeah, no, I see a lot among real estate investors, generally a frugal bunch. And that makes sense because it takes a lot of capital to buy buildings. The typical couple with both spouses are really rowing in the same direction. Right? They're living on a lot less than they make. And for somebody that's maybe financial independence, retire early, or then you're going to see a very high savings rate, 25 to 35% typically. And then they just save and they buy more assets and they do all the things, right? They're in money in the 401k and buying buildings and what have you. And then when it comes time to be completely work optional, it's hard to spend. It's hard to take money out.
Yeah. I see that in my parents. So they grew up in the 50s, 60s, and 70s in China. Those were the really turbulent times, both politically and economically. So it's limited resources. They're in the mindset of hoarding, right? And now they can't spend and they're still fighting for whether take the taxi or take the subway. I'm like, you don't have to do that. But now I'm like more, okay, I'll just pay for the taxi ride or whatever. So now they're slowly coming around. Okay, there's benefit in spending comfort and avoid some of the unnecessary conflicts but it is a slow transition. Thing for clients who are less to that extreme. It's like whatever served you before worked very well, but now we're in a different reality. So
a different stage.
Exactly. And think what are the small things that we can do in order to go to the other direction that brings happiness and balance.
So, Prudence, what would you say is the best piece of advice that you personally have ever received?
Related to life or related to money?
Is there a difference?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think it's probably that really helped me out would be from my Zen master, actually. He would say suffering is a constant. But it is in our power to turn that into an enlightenment opportunity. So basically you learn a lesson that would help you, empower you in the future so that you can thrive.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that takes us off into a little detour, but I'm 63 and I find that many folks that I talk to that are like maybe 40 and younger sometimes get surprised by suffering in life, right? That human experience is both good and bad. Like things are good and bad. You cannot eliminate suffering permanently. Right? So I'm curious, do you see anything that's uniquely American and that folks think that they can avoid suffering? I mean, I don't think you can.
I
but
think, yeah. So first of all, you look very young. You're like my inspiration for keeping healthy and a balanced life. Thank you. Yeah. So for Americans, I think one thing that we could do more is being intentional. Being intentional where you spend your money, where you spend. Are there more fulfilling missions or things you can do in order to make this world a better place? Because I'm all for the idea that when you light up your little corner, then other things are going to happen. We don't know what. I believe things are going to happen. And it matters.
What's something that you're curious about right now and how are you learning about it?
So I've gone very deep in financial therapy, actually. Because
interesting. Can you explain to the listener what that is? Because I don't think most people know.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. So we all know there's an emotional side of money. And when what we want to do with money and our behavior is actually not the same, then
not aligned.
Yeah, exactly. So for example, like you want to be responsible for your money. However, you always overspend and regret it afterwards. Or you really want to save money, but month after month you overspend your credit card. Same thing, right? Or you want to have better relationship with your kids and have happier life, but you are not willing to spend money and it's painful to spend money even though you have it. So all those are typical situations where what brings you joy and what you're doing are not the same. There's a myth. So basically, a lot of times there are a deeper, could be your personal experience, could be your underlying emotion or barriers that's stopping you or hindering you from living the true authentic life where you can thrive.
I think that's very interesting. If you could just follow up with how you're learning more about financial therapy. What are you doing your certification? Are you reading books? Are you listening to podcasts? Yeah.
Yeah, there is a certification, Certified Financial Therapist, CFT, and I just passed the exam and going through the application. And there's also different schools of therapy. And in my opinion, all of those schools can inform our work in financial planning. So the school that I'm under, like I spend a lot of time on is CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. So it's a lot of work on myself and my work helping my parents. And that has really informed how I approach my advice with my clients. And then there's the future-directed therapy, which is purely focused on how to create the action that you want in the long run, instead of dwelling on the prohibitive behaviors, but in your comfort zone. And then there's IFS, the internal family system. There are many other schools too. I think any of those schools that are well researched and well practiced can bring more information and perspective and insights to our work as financial planner.
And because your financial plan is your life expressed in numbers. I think that intersection of psychology and money is well valued in our space, in the fee-only financial planner space, but not as well valued just in the general world of financial advice, which tends to be very sales-oriented and doesn't really dive deep into the kind of underlying rationales for people's decisions and actions.
Yeah, I think the change is happening slowly. So for example, your clients have a wonderful experience with the advice you are providing, and then they refer you to many of their friends, their family members, and over time, the change is happening, but it is very slow. I agree.
Tell us where we can find you online.
Yeah, the book, The Couple's Guide to Money, will be out on Amazon on September 23rd. And I'm also very active on LinkedIn. So you can also follow me on LinkedIn. It's Prudence Zhu, CPA, CFP, RLP. Yeah, stands for Registered Life Planner.
Excellent. Excellent. And do you have a website for your company?
Yeah, it's ensolfin.com. So
ENSOFIN.com.
correct.
Perfect. Prudence, it's been such a marvelous time talking to you and about your book and about your life experiences and these beautiful perspectives that you have about the financial planning perspective and working with clients. Thank you so much, and come back.
Oh, thank you. This has been a very pleasant conversation. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to be on this show.